If you've already revised your essay and tackled higher order concerns, then you're ready to move on to editing and polishing your essay. This video covers 10 of the most common minor errors and gives you tips on how to edit them. Let's get to it. First, when you edit, check for the use of second person, which includes words like you, your, yours, yourself. In everyday speech, we use second person when talking to others, but in academic writing, we use the third person because we don't want to make assumptions about readers. For example, if I write, when you cut into a steak after cooking it without letting it rest, you risk eating dry meat. Someone who is a vegetarian or doesn't eat beef might be wondering why I would assume they do. Instead, use third person, one, ones, or people, etc. When one cuts into a steak after cooking it without letting it rest, one risks eating dry meat. Check out the handout in the description below if you need more examples. Next, check for the use of absolutes. Absolutes are words like always, never, all, none, or everyone, and they leave no room for doubt. When you use these words, you have to be 100% certain that what you say is true. For example, instead of saying everyone studies for exams, we can say most students study for exams. Using qualifiers like most, usually, occasionally, or sometimes allows us to make a point while taking into account other perspectives. As you edit, be on the lookout for improper spacing. Here are a few tips. Make sure you press the spacebar only once after a period. Second, essays should be double-spaced throughout, including headings and the work cited. Next, there should be no spaces between paragraphs in MLA formatting. Moving on, make sure to press the Tab button once to indent your paragraphs instead of pressing the spacebar. And finally, insert a page break before your works cited page or references. A neat shortcut is to press Ctrl and Enter at the same time. Another editing tip is to get rid of announcements. Announcements are phrases like, in this essay, I will, or I'm going to discuss. Phrases like this don't add any value to your writing and instead confuse readers since they lack detail. They introduce a topic but not your stance on it. For example, instead of saying, in this essay, I will discuss teenagers' dietary practices, be specific. What exactly are you arguing about their diets? Are they good or bad? Are you arguing what should be done about the diets? These are all different aspects that a writer could focus on and questions the reader is wondering. So instead of an announcement, a better thesis would state something like, poor fast food choices are causing teens to have health problems. However, if teens choose options containing fiber, they can alleviate these problems. Unlike an announcement, this statement tells the reader exactly what the essay will be about without any confusion. Confusing homophones is another minor error. Homophones are words that sound the same but have different meanings and spellings. Do what you need to do in order to memorize and get the spellings correct. You can use visuals like this one in order to remember the differences in meaning. The first there is all about location. The word here is in there. The second there is about possession and something belonging to them. So I like to remember it with a person icon whose head matches the dot in the eye. And finally, there is a contraction that means they are. So if I replace the apostrophe with an A, we have they are. See the description box below for a list of commonly confused homophones. Next, look for sentences that use I think, I believe, or in my opinion, and consider deleting them. As the author of your paper, it is implied that you think or believe what you write. Therefore, including a phrase like I think is redundant. For example, if you write, I think Richards is correct in his analysis because, the phrase I think doesn't add anything. If you take it out and start with Richards is correct, your readers understand that you agree with him. Now, you can still use I and refer to yourself in your essay, but do so only when you want to emphasize yourself over your message. Next, consider editing your hook if it's an ahistorical or general hook. There's nothing more yawn-inducing than a hook like since the dawn of time or a dictionary definition. You get one shot to impress your readers, and the first line should hook them to keep them reading. Start with a personal anecdote or a startling statistic or a bold statement. Try to avoid overused rhetorical questions or boring, complicated quotes. Next, check for passive voice. The official definition is when the object of the sentence becomes a subject, and we use it when we don't know who the subject is or want to emphasize the action. For example, the apple was eaten is passive voice because it's unclear who ate it. Active voice would be I ate the apple. You can see it's clear who is taking the action. Now, I will say that passive voice is encouraged in certain disciplines. In the sciences, for example, students write lab reports using passive voice to emphasize objectivity. Passive voice is not inherently bad. It's just that some disciplines use it and some don't. So be aware of your audience. If you're writing an essay for an English class, opt for active and descriptive verbs instead of the passive voice. Another editing tip is to make sure that the page numbers you have for your sources are in in-text citations. Now, this is better than no citation, but instead of phrases like on page 40, Johnston states that, simply start with Johnston states and add the page number in a set of parentheses or a footnote or endnote depending on the formatting you're working with. Check out the links in the description to access formatting resources. Finally, my last tip is to refer to authors by their last name. After days and weeks of working with your sources, it may feel like you and the authors of those sources have gotten close enough to be on a first name basis. But before you cite Sarah or Michael, keep in mind that in MLA and APA formatting, we refer to authors by their last name after mentioning the full name the first time. Okay, so those are my top 10 editing tips. If you're guilty of making any of these errors, just remember they are minor issues and they're fairly easy to fix. I hope you found these tips helpful, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Good luck!